All right, hey, this is Chad. I am going to go over exposure blending with ambient and flash frames. This is a kind of a difficult scene, so I don't know if it's going to be good or bad to show. I haven't tried to edit it yet, but as you can see from the exterior, it was a dark and cloudy day. So we actually had to shoot this one in a kind of complex fashion. All the interior lights were turned off. The room is rather dark when the lights were off, and then we shot some ambient frames, and I'm hoping that we can pull through some of these overexposed windows on top of some of these flash frames. And as you can see, we're going to use 3 flash frames. It's one with the flash on the left, one with the flash in the middle of the room, and then one back here. The flash is camera right out of frame. And we'll go over why we're using each of those once we bring these into Photoshop. I'm editing a shoot for a builder right now, so pardon all of the film strip mishigas. Here we go, opening his layers. And I did a few tweaks, as you can see over here on the right, to these images already, but basically just made sure they had consistent color and tone from image to image. Now, one mistake that can happen is you have an image that's maybe too bright or overexposed, and you're trying to layer that on top of an image that's much darker, and it's very hard to blend properly. So you got to make sure your midtones, highlights, and shadows are consistent from shot to shot so that your blending is made a little bit easier. We'll wait for this to finish loading. All right, looks like we're all in. The first thing I'm going to do real quick is label these. So the first 3 shots are ambient. So we're going to group those. Command-Shift-Click and then Command-G to group. And just call those ambient. Put those at the bottom so you don't have to worry about them. The first thing I do is blend together the flash layers. So we can make this easy on ourselves or hard on ourselves. Part of it is dependent on where you're placing a flash. This one we had, I think, 1 or 2 large strobes placed out of frame, and then really the main light that was moving around was this, I guess, small 360 watt second flash. So I think it was maybe a 1 or 2 light setup here. We were lucky because we didn't have any ambient light to really battle. It's all just our own artificial light. So what I'm going to do is just label these shots. So we're going to say, we're going to label them based on which part of the frame we prefer. I'm going to call this right because I like the right side of the image here. The left side obviously has a flash in it. We're going to call this left, and we'll call it left and mid just because I don't know what else to call it right now, but we're going to use this frame to use to film the left side of our image here. This is going to be called flat and frames. I shot this picture specifically to get a nice flat even light across the room in case I had any just trouble areas at the end, and of course to get these pictures without any window glare in them. So we're going to bring those on top, hide them for now, and then just look at right and left. We have the right side, the left side. We're going to create a mask on the right frame, get a gradient out, and then filling with black. Oh, wrong way. We're just going to drag a gradient across and quickly get rid of that strobe on the left side. And as you can see, I mean, that's just a one-step process to quickly get the results you're looking for. From there, you come in with a big, soft, heavy brush and kind of fill in the areas that you think need some help. Down here, looks like it got a little dark. And I like to make sure the light is reflective of the scene you're shooting. So in this shot, we're going to make these windows a lot brighter, so we want to make sure it looks like the light's coming from the windows. As you can see, the curtains have a highlight on the inside edge, and then also the light looks like it's coming through that window. So we should have some highlights on the rug closest to the window, and some shadows on the far side of the table away from the window. So just be cognizant when you're putting this together of how that all looks. It should have a consistent feel. And then I'm just going to play around. I have the brush set on black now. It's very big. And I just want to see what happens if I mask some of this out. There we go. That's what I thought. So we're going to lighten up this foreground area. I guess it's foreground, but it's behind the table. And we're just erasing the front mask here and replacing it with this mask where we have this nice even light coming from either side of the table. And we're just masking away. And like, really this looks good enough for our purposes. I don't think we need to get very heavy-handed in this scene. I want to keep this short. But now let's mask in those reflective kind of artwork picture frames on the wall. You can see there's just a heavy flash flare in there. So what we're going to do is just get a polygon lasso tool and just mark out the insides of these. I don't want to get the frames just inside the frame because the frames should kind of match their surroundings in terms of reflectivity and the amount of light they're giving off in the direction of that light. So we have one frame selected. I would use pen tool if these were curved surfaces, but since they're pretty straight and straightforward, honestly, we're just going to do the polygon lasso. So 8 clicks later, here we go. I'm going to activate the layer and then just mask it. Let's make sure we're selected. And there we go. So now we have some frames that maybe are a little too bright, but we can fix that. You can see our sloppy selection is getting in the way here. So now we just have to brush in the tops of these to make sure everything looks right. And I'm okay with some reflections, and you'll see we're actually going to back this off a little bit to make sure it doesn't look too out of place. So let's just dial down the opacity a little bit. I'm okay with some reflections in there. And now it looks a lot more natural, but at the same time, not over the top, which is the look we're going for. Yeah. Quick tip, they look a little blue to me. It has like a blue tint here, so I'm going to do a curves adjustment layer and then create a clipping mask only on that frames layer. And to just take out some of the blue, we're going to just drag down that blue RGB curve. And that looks like it did the trick. Might back that off. Great. I'm going to copy this layer now, and we're going to use it for a couple touch-up areas. Let's group this into, call it artwork. And now we have an artwork layer where we got rid of the reflections. I like to just take lots of flash frames on site and then use those to stitch together the final picture. That way we're not spending countless hours trying to get reflections just right. I feel like it's a huge time suck. So now with this duplicated layer, we're going to call it flat light. You can see we were having some issues kind of around the window here. While the gradient did a great job, it didn't do a perfect job. So really above and around, really the whole window and then above the window, I think we're going to mask in from this frame. So let's create an inverse mask. And again, we can get sloppy at first and then touch up later. There's no need to get it exact in the first pass through. Okay, created layer mask, awesome. And then we're just going to use this quick selection tool to get that chair out of there. Get this curtain fixed up a little bit. This inside edge of the window looks a little wonky, but I think we can fix that in the next step. But as you can see, we don't have competing light sources from alternate angles now. It's all like one light source behind that window. Great. What else do we got here? We still have this layer to use later. We might use it. I like how the edges of this chair are highlighted. But I don't like anything else. So I'm going to make another copy of this layer, delete a layer mask, and then we're going to go to lighter color as a blending mode. Create an inverse mask, and we're just going to paint in the edges of the chair pretty heavy-handedly. But at the same time, this is the fastest way to do it. So now we can just paint in those highlights, and all of a sudden that chair pops off the background a little bit more than it did. When you have the gray and gray, it's easy for them to blend in, whatever this wall color is. I don't know if these are really necessary, but we can try to paint in here too and see what happens. That doesn't look like that's going to help us at all. Might as well just spruce this stuff up and see if we can make anything pop just a little bit more while we're in here. That looks good. No. All right, I'm done clicking around. Maybe. Okay, now I'm done. Okay, so now we have all of our flash layers blended. So remember, we started with 3 flash layers, and now we have 1, 2, 3, that's the adjustment layers, 3, 4, 5. So we duplicated that layer twice and kind of used it for different purposes. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'm going to brighten up this window frame on the right. Now that I look at it, it looks a little bit dark. But since we're in the lighter color mode, that'll be really easy. Just on, we're going to call this lighten. Using your brush, just brush that in real quick. Sorry, a little confusion. Actually, it's not going to work as well as I thought. I'm a big fan of this quick selection tool. For most of this work that we do, it's not necessary to have a perfect selection, especially when you're blending a lot of similar layers together. Oh, looks like we got a little too sassy over here. There we go. I was accidentally painting on the actual layer, not the mask, so pardon me. Had to go back a couple steps. Back to the brush, we're on white, and we're just going to paint in that window frame. That looks good. And of course this is easy because I'm shooting on lenses that don't have a lot of distortion. So I can draw straight lines with a lot of confidence. There's not many curved edges, especially on these more simple shots. So we can really just kind of jam along. All right, so that window frame's brightened up nicely. Almost too much. There you go. Just backed it off, got a black brush, and just brushed that out. Okay, so here we are. This is where we kind of started, and we've just kind of added highlights and removed flashes, right? I mean, that's really the end goal. All of your photos should look pretty good to start with. We're just taking the best parts of each. So now we have this ambient stuff to deal with. I'm going to group this, call it flash. This is like our base ambient frame, which I think is actually a little dark. We're going to probably use this for a window frame. I like this one as a window frame. My dog's barking, sorry. Please hold. Okay, we're back. Sorry, I realize sometimes I edit all the way pulled out. That's not very helpful. So we have the ambient frames lined up here, the bright ones on top. This one underneath that we labeled window frame is the second layer down. Let's hide that. We're only focused on this one right now. And really, I don't like to blend in a lot of ambient. I feel like while it looks good, sometimes it doesn't look right to me. I don't know why. But we're going to go ahead and just start blending. Let's put this on luminosity, because all we really want are the tones. And as you can see, as we blend this thing in, it's less vibrant than our original shot. And I'm not really okay with that. So let's just pick out some areas where we think it might help us. I think it looks kind of nice on this chair, nice on these, sorry again for pulling out, looks nice on these ornaments on the table. But mostly, I think the wall tones we can benefit from, maybe a little bit of that texture, but really it looks like the ceiling and wall tones is the only thing we can benefit from by using these. So we're going to do that. I think it's important to use the window frames here. If you don't use this window frame, we're actually going to use a pen tool. I just realized we're going to want a nice clean selection on this curtain edge. Curtains are the worst because they don't really follow any rules. It's not like a ceiling fan, for instance, just has, you know, hard, predictable edges. This, not so much. Okay, we're going to come straight across there. We're going to feather all this together, so it's not vital that it's 1,000,000% accurate, but it needs to be pretty accurate. Coming back across, we're just going to click here, come back down the other side of this curtain. You'll see what we're going to do is actually pull in the very bright window, and then we're going to overlay that with the darker exposure near the fence line. So we're not getting a super dark sky or anything like that, because that doesn't exactly look good when you're trying to market a property. Oh, went too far. There we go. All right. Command-Shift-Enter to create a selection from the pen tool. Feather that radius. And then what we're going to do is paint in using a soft brush. Start painting this stuff in. I'm not worried about the color. Again, we're going to be bringing in just a regular layer on top of this shortly. What I am worried about is tonal values. Oh, and my mouse just died. All right. Wonderful technical error, technical delay. My mouse decided to die midway through this video, so just super helpful. Okay, so we have a luminosity mask from this light layer. I'm actually not super happy with the colors it's bringing out, so I'm just going to do a normal layer. You can see the difference when we mask that in. It looks great above the window, maybe a little too dark up there. We can fix that. Now we want to bring in some of this window light across the wall and actually in those windows. So what we're going to do is the same thing we've been doing. It's just quick click, boom. I don't know if it actually helps, but I hold shift while I'm making a quick selection over large areas, and for some reason I like the results. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a fake thing, or I just like to do it because it feels good. But that's maybe a pro tip, maybe a waste of finger energy. Go ahead and try it. Let me know what you think. Cool, masking these guys in. It's looking a lot more natural all of a sudden because the window light reflects the interior lighting, which is crucial, clearly. Okay, so this, I guess this is how the light actually falls in this room. So we're just gonna go with the flow and see what happens. If we don't like it, we can just like undo it. No, I think that's distracting. Maybe to a lesser degree, that'll look good. So let's try it to a lesser degree. Delete layer mask. We're going to do a loom. And bring the flow down to like 16%. And I don't know if you guys ever have this issue, but I'll show you how I get around it. Is sometimes I really like the highlights something brings in when I do a luminosity blending layer, but I'm not thrilled all the time with the shadows it brings. This I think is okay. It looks pretty natural, so I think we'll just keep it. But we can duplicate that layer and then just do lighter color. And then if you delete the luminosity layer underneath, you'll see the difference. The shadows don't come down, just the highlights come up. It can create some issues sometimes, so I caution you to use this, like use it with care. But I feel like sometimes it actually does a really good job of getting exactly what you want. Sometimes it just makes things harder. But in this case, I kind of like it. I'll just bring it in. I'm going to start collapsing some of these layers because now it's just like gibberish over here. We're going to call this one ambient. Blend. Call this one window light, and this is window light. Lighten mode, right? Just so you see what's happening. But this is all of a sudden looking like a real room, a real picture, and I think that's really exciting, especially when you compare it to just an ambient frame like this. It's starting to look pretty darn good. And actually, I'm pretty happy with this. Up here looks a little gray to me, so let's go ahead and fix that. And we're just going to do that with a regular old color overlay. I consider most of this done. We could bring in this window frame outside. I don't know if that definition is going to help the quality of the end result here. I mean, we could quickly just preview it. Oh, we have to fix this edge up here as well. So like, I think it competes too much with the interior. So I'm gonna leave it out. I'm gonna make sure we fix this up here. I feel like we got a little hasty. With this ambient blend. So the quick way is just select everything around it. It's nice and bright and white, easy for the computer to know what we're doing. Create an inverse selection, and then we're going to just paint out those areas with the brush. I like selecting areas and inverting areas and doing things kind of quickly if I can. Just because you're editing a lot of images per day, those little tweaks add up to potentially a lot of time saved. Okay, so that looks good to me. Now we have this odd little window ledge here. See, there's like a highlight right there, so we're going to get rid of that. Make sure we have a nice hard edge. Create some definition from that window light. Okay, cool. So, to me, this light well, I have to figure out what's going on over there. I'm going to create a mask around this area that we wanted to select. I was trying to get rid of this window issue over here. It wasn't working. All right, so I went silent there for a little bit. Sorry if you got bored and canceled out. I just had to just making sure we could wrestle everything into place, and it looks like we did. It still looks like an overcast day in this room, which I guess is okay. Really, our goal is to just make it look bright and airy and inviting. And I think we've done the job there, especially when you compare it to the alternative, which is just a straight ambient frame. This is no light inside at all, just window light provided and a long exposure. This, to me, is a fantastic alternative to that. Notice we cancel out some of these reflections over here. Chairs look great, the table pops, you can see that nice wood grain. This all looks pretty much ready to go. So we're gonna just create a flattened copy of this image, and we're gonna call this cleanup. And I'm just gonna do a little bit of cleanup to make sure that the viewer's eye is not hung up on any little imperfections that really don't matter, like what looks like a footprint over here. I am using the patch tool because it is fast and intuitive and easy to use and requires little mental energy. If I were doing something a little more intensive, I'd be doing clone stamp. If we have any dodging and burning, we'll do that at the end. Like this edge right here will probably be dodged so it doesn't look like it's sticking up. We can easily pull this outlet down. Again, this is with the lasso. What is it called? The patch tool. Get this outlet over here because it just stands out like a sore thumb. And looks pretty good. Let's get the clone stamp. We're going to hit S for clone stamp. Sample this area. And if you're watching this, I'm sure you know how to use clone stamp and all that stuff. This is more of a flash blending video, so if you're learning how to flash blend, I'm sure you've learned the basics of clone stamping and all that jazz. But this is looking pretty good. I'm much happier with this end result. I think it achieves what we need it to. Let's go ahead and dodge this real quick and we'll call it a wrap. The dodge, shadows, exposure 6. This should do the trick. Yeah, I think it's going to work. Right around that edge. I'm just going back and forth. Yeah. See how much less it stands out. It's still there. I'm not going to bother fixing it. You could fix that pretty easy. If you want to do a liquefy, that might be the hardest way to do it. Maybe the easiest way, just depending on what you prefer in a workflow. We might have got a little muddy through here. We could sharpen that a little bit if needed. I don't ever do this, but try it. I'm just going to use a sharpened brush. Yep, and it worked just fine. There's a sharpened brush tool that works pretty well, almost too well, it looks like. But we got our texture a little muddy down there, so I wanted to bring some of that back. And we're ready to rock. This is looking pretty solid. Just to circle back, here's all the layers we're using. These two we're not using. I'm not going to delete them, actually. We're just going to call X XX. So, I mean, we used a fair amount of layers to get to this end result. But starting from one flash frame with almost no window light to this, me talking a mouse malfunction, some blending and cleanup, this is our final result. So I'm just going to save this as a PSD, and it'll be imported in Lightroom, and that'll be it. If I have any final touch-ups, I can bring it back, maybe change the windows if I decide to warm up certain areas, sharpen areas, whatever. Always remember to save your composites as PSD files. Otherwise, you are doing yourself a disservice. I will be back with you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.